The red sky of Erebus Prime was filled with fire and smoke. The colony world had been peaceful once, with green fields, quiet towns, and families who had dreamed of a life away from war. Now the ground shook with every explosion, and the air tasted of dust and burning metal. Above the shattered horizon, dark alien ships drifted like vultures, raining plasma bolts onto the dying city below. The Velkari Empire had come, and with them came destruction. Captain Mara Solon crouched behind the wreckage of an old transport truck, her rifle clutched tight in trembling hands. She could feel the heat from the burning buildings even through her armor. Around her, what was left of her soldiers waited for her signal. They were tired, hungry, and nearly out of ammunition. The enemy controlled the skies, the streets, even the air they breathed. But still, Mara refused to surrender. She looked at her people, farmers turned soldiers, engineers holding rifles too heavy for their hands, and she saw something the Velkari could never understand. She saw defiance. "Hold the line," she whispered, voice steady even as her heart pounded. "We make them pay for every step," the radio crackled. "Captain, they've breached the eastern barricade," a voice said through static. "We can't hold them much longer." Mara closed her eyes for a moment. The eastern barricade was the last wall before the command center. If that fell, there would be nothing left to defend. She opened her eyes and spoke calmly. "Fall back to the inner ring. Keep the civilians moving toward the tunnels." She switched channels to the communications officer, Sergeant Vale. "Vale, status on the distress beacon?" Vale's tired voice came back, distorted by interference. "Still transmitting, ma'am. Signal strength is weak, but it's reaching the relay. I think someone might have heard us." "Keep it running," Mara said. "Don't stop until we get a response." Outside, the ground thundered again as alien walkers advanced through the streets, their metallic legs crushing the remains of cars and homes. The Velkari soldiers followed behind, tall, insect-like beings with armored hides and cruel, glowing eyes. Their weapons hissed with green fire, cutting through walls like paper. Every human that stood against them fell in seconds. But still, the resistance fought on, buying time, even when they knew the end was coming. Mara moved from cover to cover, shouting orders, dragging a wounded soldier behind a collapsed wall. Her rifle jammed, and she slammed it against the rubble to clear it. The air was filled with the constant hum of alien engines and the screams of battle. Somewhere in the distance, a building collapsed, sending a cloud of dust into the sky. The Velkari commander's voice echoed over the loudspeakers they had set up across the city. His voice was smooth and cold, translated into human speech by their machines. "People of Erebus Prime," he said, "your world is lost. Your defenses are gone. Surrender and we will show mercy. Resist and you will be erased from history." Mara spat into the dirt. "Mercy," she muttered. "From monsters who burn children alive? Not likely." She pressed her hand to her earpiece. "Vale, any word from the fleet?" "Nothing yet," Vale said. "The relay's working, but no response." Mara looked up at the sky, now hidden by smoke and fire. Somewhere far beyond those clouds, beyond the black sea of space, Earth still existed. But it was so far away, weeks, maybe months of travel. Even if they had heard, they would never arrive in time. The thought made her chest tighten. She couldn't show it, not in front of her people, but the fear was always there. What if they really were alone? Then she heard a sound, faint, mechanical, but different from the alien weapons. She turned toward the sky. A single human drone, damaged but still flying, wobbled through the smoke. It scanned the ruins and broadcast a signal. The humans cheered weakly. It was a reminder. Someone, somewhere, might still be listening. "Get that drone back to the tunnels," Mara shouted. "Its data could lead them here." But before anyone could move, a Velkari bolt struck it. The drone exploded in a burst of white light. The soldiers ducked. When the dust cleared, only pieces remained. The brief moment of hope vanished as quickly as it came. Mara knelt beside the wreckage, staring at the twisted metal. "We keep fighting," she whispered. "Even if no one comes." Night fell slowly on Erebus Prime, though the fires made it seem brighter than day. The humans retreated into the old mining tunnels that ran beneath the colony. There, among the flickering lights and the smell of oil, Mara gathered her people. Children huddled beside their parents. Soldiers sat in silence, reloading weapons they had little ammunition for. Some cried quietly. Others simply stared into nothing. Sergeant Vale approached her. "Captain," he said, voice low, "if Earth doesn't answer by morning, what do we do?" She looked at him, her face covered in dirt and sweat. "Then we make them regret coming here." Vale hesitated. "There's something else. The Velkari have started rounding up civilians near the transport yards. They're loading them onto ships, probably taking them to labor camps." Mara's jaw tightened. She wanted to save them, but they didn't have the numbers or the firepower. Every choice was a gamble, and every loss tore a piece of her away. She walked over to the wall, where a cracked screen showed a live feed from the surface. Alien patrols moving through the streets, dragging prisoners. It made her stomach turn. "Earth, if you can hear this," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Please, hurry!" Hours passed. The night outside was endless. Above, the Velkari ships orbited in silence, their blue lights glimmering through the smoke. The humans waited, their hearts heavy. Some prayed. Others prepared for one last fight. Mara stood near the tunnel entrance, watching the sky through a small camera feed. The stars looked distant, cold, unreachable. Suddenly, the communications unit flickered. Vale jumped to his feet. "Signal spike!" he shouted. "Something's coming through!" Mara rushed over. The static on the screen shifted, lines of code flashing. A faint voice cut through the noise, human but broken. "This is Earth Command. Signal received. Hold position." Everyone froze. For a second, no one dared to breathe. Vale turned to Mara, eyes wide. "They heard us." Mara felt her heart stop, then pound like a drum. "Say it again," she whispered. "Please say it again." The signal faded, then returned, stronger this time. "Erebus Prime, this is Earth Command. Reinforcements inbound. Hold out as long as you can. You are not forgotten." Tears welled in Mara's eyes, but she smiled for the first time in days. Around her, soldiers and civilians alike began to cheer, weak but real. The sound filled the tunnels like sunlight breaking through clouds. Hope, fragile and bright, returned to the hearts of the beaten. But above the planet, the Velkari fleet had also detected the transmission. Their commander watched the readings with a frown. "Earth Command?" he hissed. "Impossible! The Terrans do not have the strength to challenge us." His second-in-command bowed slightly. "Even if they come, my lord, they will arrive too late." The commander's eyes glowed brighter. "Then let them come. We will show them what happens to those who defy the Velkari." Down below, Mara wiped her face and stood tall. "You heard them," she said to her people. "Help is coming. We hold this line until they get here." Cheers echoed through the tunnels, mixed with determination and exhaustion. For the first time in weeks, there was something to believe in. The fire still burned. The aliens still ruled the surface. But now every human heart on Erebus Prime carried the same thought. Earth knows. Earth is coming. Outside, in the endless black of space, far beyond what anyone could see, something vast was already moving. Engines the size of cities came alive. The stars themselves seemed to dim. A fleet was on its way, a fleet unlike any the galaxy had seen before. But on the surface, none of them knew that yet. They only had hope. And for humans, that was enough to keep fighting. Captain Mara Solon looked up one last time before returning to the front lines. "We're not done yet," she whispered. Not by a long shot. And in the distance, where the stars met the void, the first shadow of Earth's dreadnoughts began to rise. The morning after the signal felt different on Erebus Prime. The smoke still rose from the ruins, and the ground still smelled of ash and blood. But there was something in the air that hadn't been there before. Hope. Weak and fragile, yes, but alive. People whispered about it like it was a secret flame they needed to protect. Word had spread through the tunnels overnight. Earth had heard them. Captain Mara Solon stood near the main tunnel entrance, watching the narrow slice of sky through a cracked camera feed. It was still dark with storm clouds and smoke, but she watched anyway, waiting for something, anything. Her armor was dented and dirty, her hair matted with dust. She hadn't slept in days, but her eyes burned with determination. Around her, Small groups of survivors gathered supplies, repaired weapons, and patched wounded soldiers. They were tired, but they were moving again. That mattered. Sergeant Vale walked over, carrying a tray of ration packs. "We've managed to organize food for another 2 days," he said. "After that, we'll be eating protein paste straight from the emergency tanks." Mara gave a small smile. "Better than starving." "We've done worse," Vale hesitated. "You really think Earth will get here, ma'am? I mean, it's a long way." Mara looked at him and then back at the screen. "I don't know when, but I know they heard us. And if they heard us, they're coming. That's enough for now." "Oh, they heard us. And if they heard us, they're coming. That's enough for now." Outside, the Velkhari were rebuilding their strongholds. The aliens had taken over the old orbital shipyards, turning them into fortresses. They didn't believe humans could fight back anymore. To them, the battle was already won. But something strange had begun to happen. Their long-range sensors kept picking up strange distortions, shadows on the edge of their scans. The Velkhari dismissed it as interference from the planet's atmosphere or debris from the battle. But some of their engineers were uneasy. The readings were too regular, too deliberate, almost like something massive was moving between jump points. In the tunnels below, humans clung to rumors. Someone claimed they saw lights in the sky, white and sharp like blades. Someone else swore they'd intercepted a coded message, coordinates maybe, or flight paths. The soldiers didn't care what was true. Every rumor was a reason to hold out one more day. That night, Mara sat beside a flickering lantern, listening to the static hum of the comms. She replayed the message from Earth Command again and again. The voice was distorted, but it was human. That was what mattered. "Reinforcements inbound. You are not forgotten." Those words replayed in her head like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the signal console sparked. Vale rushed in, tapping the controls. "Ma'am, I think we're getting something. Same channel as before." Mara leaned forward. "Put it on speaker." A low hum filled the tunnel, then a voice, clearer this time. "Erebus Prime, this is Fleet Command. We are en route. Estimated arrival 30 hours. Hold your position." Mara blinked. 30 hours? She looked at Vale, disbelief mixing with relief. That can't be right. "They're that close?" Vale laughed, a wild, exhausted laugh. "Guess they were already on their way." Mara gripped the edge of the console, trying to steady herself. "Get everyone ready. The Velkhari won't sit still once they know." Up above, the aliens had already detected the transmission. The Velkhari commander, a tall, silver-scaled figure named Kreth Volan, stood inside his command chamber aboard the warship Var Tul. His red eyes glowed as he stared at the readings. "So," he said, voice cold. "The Terrans have answered." His second-in-command bowed. "Our fleet can destroy any reinforcement they send. We outnumber them 20-1. Kreth's expression didn't change. "Outnumber, yes, but underestimate them, never." He turned toward the massive viewing window where Erebus Prime spun below. "The humans have a reputation old as war itself. They fight hardest when they believe they have nothing left to lose." He paused, then gestured toward his communications officer. "Deploy the outer fleets. We will meet their reinforcements before they arrive. Let the humans watch as their saviors burn." Back on the planet, Mara's people began to move. The resistance set up ambush points along the ruined streets. Old defense drones were reactivated. The last artillery battery was dug out from beneath the rubble. It was barely functional, but it could still fire. Every man and woman knew what they were fighting for now, not survival, but time. They didn't have to win. They just had to last long enough. By midday, the sky was filled with activity. Alien ships moved into position, their engines lighting up the clouds in eerie green light. From the tunnels, Mara watched through the feed. "They're preparing for something," she said. "Vale, get the strike teams ready. What about the civilians?" "They stay underground. We'll keep the Velkhari busy on the surface." That night, the first wave came. Alien skimmers swept over the ruins, firing into the streets. Resistance fighters answered with rockets and small arms. Explosions lit up the darkness, turning the city into a maze of fire and shadow. Mara fought from the front, her rifle burning through its last charge cells. Every time she ducked behind cover, she could hear her own breath shaking, but she refused to stop. The aliens expected humans to break. Instead, they met fury. A group of resistance fighters ambushed a Velkari patrol near the old refinery, setting off improvised mines that tore the enemy apart. Another team hacked into a captured drone and used it to fire on its own fleet. Every small victory sent a ripple of courage through the tunnels, but the cost was high. Dozens fell for every one alien killed. By dawn, the resistance had been pushed back to the inner district once again. Smoke filled the tunnels and wounded soldiers lay in rows. Mara knelt beside a young fighter whose arm had been burned. He tried to speak, but she stopped him. "Save your strength," she said softly. "They'll be here soon." He managed a weak smile. "You really think so?" Mara looked up past the cracked ceiling toward the hidden sky. "I know so." The Velkari commander watched from orbit as his ground forces advanced. "The humans are resilient," he admitted, "but their courage will not save them." He turned to his sensors officer. "Report. What is the status of the Terran reinforcements?" The officer frowned. "We can't locate them, my lord. The readings are unclear. It's as if something enormous is bending the field lines across multiple sectors." Kreth narrowed his eyes. "Explain." "Sir, it's as though—" The officer hesitated, looking pale. "As though the stars themselves are disappearing." And then it began. Without warning, the distant void outside the Velkari perimeter rippled. The stars blinked out, one after another, swallowed by darkness. The distortion grew, forming a shadow that dwarfed the largest alien cruiser. Then, in a flash of white fire, something tore through space, a shape so vast it blocked the light of Erebus's sun. The first of Earth's dreadnoughts had arrived. Sensors screamed with overload warnings. The Velkari fleet scrambled to respond. Ships turned, weapons charged, orders shouted. Kreth stared at the sight with disbelief. How many?" Before anyone could answer, two more emerged behind the first. 3 colossal vessels, each 1 kilometers long, their hulls glowing with the faint blue of their engines. The names burned bright on their sides: EAS Vengeance, EAS Dauntless, and EAS Goliath. For a moment, silence filled the void. And then a voice came through every open channel, calm, controlled, unmistakably human. "This is Admiral Kaito of Earth Command. Erebus Prime, we have you on sensors." "Hold fast!" The Velkari commander bared his teeth. "Open fire! All batteries!" From the planet's surface, Mara looked up as streaks of green plasma filled the sky. The heavens themselves seemed to catch fire. She watched as those impossible ships took the full barrage and kept moving. Slowly, steadily, they advanced, shields glowing like molten gold, and then they fired back. Blue lances of energy cut across the stars, striking alien warships and tearing them apart in seconds. The explosions lit up the orbit like miniature suns. The Velkari formation broke instantly, panic spreading through their ranks. Down on Erebus Prime, every human stopped what they were doing. The roar of the bombardment shook the ground, and for the first time since the invasion began, the colonists didn't feel fear. They felt awe. Mara watched the feed, her mouth open, her heart pounding. "They came," she whispered, voice shaking. They actually came. Around her, soldiers cheered, shouted, cried. Some dropped to their knees. Others raised their weapons toward the sky in salute. The dreadnoughts moved closer. And for the Velkari, the day of arrogance was over. Above the burning planet, the shadow of Earth darkened the stars. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy trembled. The sky above Erebus Prime no longer looked like a sky. It was a storm, a living storm of fire, light, and sound. The alien fleet that had once loomed like gods over the colony was now being torn apart piece by piece. Great arcs of blue energy lanced down from orbit, cutting through Velkari ships and leaving trails of molten debris that rained across the upper atmosphere. For the humans below, it was as if the heavens themselves had come alive in fury. Captain Mara Solon stood outside the tunnel entrance, staring upward through the smoke. Even through the distortion of her cracked visor, she could see flashes of the battle above. The sound came seconds later, deep rolling thunder that made her bones tremble. "They're winning," whispered Vale, his eyes wide. "By all the stars, they're actually winning." Mara didn't answer. She was watching too closely. Every bright flare in the sky made her heart leap, sometimes in joy, sometimes in fear. The dreadnoughts were powerful, yes, but they were also few. There were still dozens, maybe hundreds of Velkhari ships. The aliens had ruled space for centuries. Humanity was new to this scale of war. She could only hope that Earth's admirals knew what they were doing. Above, in orbit, Admiral Cato stood on the command deck of the EAS Vengeance. His face lit by the holographic display. His uniform was crisp, his tone calm, but the cold fire in his eyes betrayed the truth. He was not here for a victory. He was here for vengeance. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "Prioritize their communication relays. I want their fleet blind." His officers moved quickly, fingers flying across the panels. "Yes, Admiral." Targeting solutions locked. The Vengeance shuddered as its primary rail cannon fired. A single kinetic slug accelerated to near-light speed. It struck the Velkhari flagship's flank, and in one instant, the ship's entire port section vaporized. The explosion lit up the void like sunrise. Cato watched silently as the enemy vessel broke apart, debris scattering like dust. "That's for Arcadia Station," he said under his breath. No one on the bridge needed to ask what he meant. The Velkhari had destroyed many human colonies in the early years, small, undefended outposts. Arcadia had been one of the first. Humanity had not forgotten. But the Velkhari were not beaten yet. Their warships swarmed like hornets, circling and diving. Plasma fire struck against human shields in waves, shaking the dreadnoughts but not breaking them. "Shield strength holding at 87%, reported an officer. Cato nodded. "Bring the Dauntless forward. I want overlapping fire on their heavy cruisers." The ES Dauntless obeyed, moving like a mountain come to life. Its hull bore deep scars from centuries of human warfare, some decorative, others earned. Its captain's voice came through the channel, rough and sure. Dauntless reporting in. "Bringing the pain, Admiral." "Glad to hear it," Cato replied. The Dauntless fired its broadside batteries, hundreds of railguns and missile pods unleashing a synchronized storm. Alien ships vanished in flashes of light. One by one, the Velkhari's outer fleet broke apart. On the surface, Mara and her soldiers watched in stunned silence. The rumbling never stopped now. It was constant, like a heartbeat of the planet itself. Every few seconds, a piece of burning wreckage fell from orbit, streaking across the clouds. Then Vale shouted, "Incoming message from orbit! It's them!" Mara grabbed the comms mic. "This is Captain Mara Solon of Erebus Resistance. Go ahead." The voice that came through was steady, powerful, unmistakably human. "Captain Solon, this is Admiral Cato of Earth Command. We have established orbital control. Prepare for atmospheric insertion." "We're coming down," Mara almost laughed, a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. "Copy that, Admiral. You're cleared to land anywhere you want." "Negative," Cato said. "We're not landing. We're deploying," she frowned. "Deploying what?" A moment later, the sky answered for him. The dreadnoughts opened their lower hangar bays. Hundreds of streaks of light shot downward, each one blazing like a falling star. Drop pods, thousands of them, carrying Earth Marines, combat walkers, and orbital strike units. They fell through the atmosphere like meteors, leaving trails of flame behind them. Vale's jaw dropped. There must be thousands of them." "Every fleet carries a division," Mara said softly. 3 dreadnoughts. That's an army." When the first pods hit the surface, the ground shook. The hatches exploded open, and armored figures emerged, tall, heavy, silent. The soldiers of Earth's modern war machine. Their armor gleamed black and silver, marked with the emblem of the Terran eagle. Each one carried a weapon as long as a man's arm, humming with quiet energy. One Marine removed his helmet and stepped forward. His face was pale and calm, his eyes cold. "Captain Solon?" he asked through his comm. Mara nodded. "That's me." "Admiral Cato sends his regards," the Marine said. "We're here to clean up your planet." Mara couldn't help it. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, it felt like the weight of the world was lifting. But even as hope returned, the battle was far from over. In orbit, the Velkhari commander Kreth Volan refused to retreat. "Reform the fleet!" he roared. "They think us weak, but they have not seen the true fire of the Empire." He turned to his second officer. "Signal the Devourer. Prepare the storm cannon. The officer hesitated. My lord, that weapon will destroy everything in low orbit, even our own ships. Do it! Kreth shouted. If the humans wish for death, we will give it to them. Moments later, deep within the belly of his flagship, the storm cannon began to charge. A glowing red light pulsed brighter and brighter until it bathed the entire ship in crimson. Power surged through its systems, enough to light a continent. Kaito's sensors caught the spike immediately. What the hell is that? He demanded. Unknown energy signature, replied his science officer. Massive buildup, possibly a superweapon. Can we stop it? Only if we hit it before it fires. Kaito didn't hesitate. Target the source. All dreadnoughts, concentrate fire on that ship. The Vengeance, Dauntless, and Goliath turned as one, unleashing everything they had. The void filled with light. But the Velkari flagship's shields held, glowing like molten glass. Too strong, the weapons officer said. It's still charging. Kaito clenched his fists. Get me the Dauntless. Captain here, came the reply. How close can you get? The captain laughed darkly. Close enough to make it count. The Dauntless roared forward, engines blazing, ignoring the storm of plasma hitting its hull. The Dreadnought dove straight into the Velkari line, its cannons firing non-stop. It broke through the enemy formation, shields collapsing, armor melting. The storm cannon reached full power. Kreth watched its charge build to critical and sneered. Too late, Terrans. But then the Dauntless rammed him. The collision lit the sky brighter than the sun. For one terrible second, all of Erebus Prime went white. The shockwave hit seconds later, a wall of sound that shattered windows and split the clouds. When the light faded, the Velkari flagship was gone. So was the Dauntless. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Kaito stood in silence. His officers stared at the readings, nothing left but debris. Signal lost, one whispered. Kaito lowered his head. He knew what he was doing, he said quietly. He always did. On the ground, Mara looked up at the sky and saw the explosion. For a moment, she didn't understand. Then realization hit her. She closed her eyes. Whoever you were, she murmured, thank you. Above her, the wreckage of alien ships burned as they fell. The remaining Velkari vessels broke formation, retreating in panic. Humanity had won the orbit. The sky belonged to Earth once more. Mara raised her radio. This is Captain Solon to all resistance units. The fleet is ours. Push forward! Take back our world. All across Erebus Prime, cheers erupted. Soldiers ran from the tunnels. Civilians poured into the open. The battle for the planet was just beginning, but for the first time it was being fought on human terms. The Velkari had thought no one would come. They had believed Earth was too far, too slow, too weak. They were wrong because when humanity came, it came like a storm, and it did not stop. The surface of Erebus Prime trembled as dawn broke through the haze of war. What had once been a world of terror was now a battlefield between hope and annihilation. Smoke drifted across broken cityscapes carried by winds heavy with ash. The sky was no longer red from fire. It was blue again, though veiled by the ghosts of the battle above. And yet, even through that haze, flashes of light still tore the heavens apart as human and alien ships clashed in the upper atmosphere. Mara Solon stood on a ridge overlooking the ruins of her city. The ground beneath her was littered with the metallic husks of Velkari soldiers. Their bodies were strange, tall and insectoid with armor that shimmered like oil. Once their presence filled her people with fear. Now they were reminders that the tide had turned. Earth had come. All night, the thunder of orbital bombardment had echoed through the sky. Entire sections of the alien army had been reduced to molten craters by precision strikes. What was left of the Velkari occupation had begun to scatter, retreating into the wild regions beyond the cities. But even cornered, the Velkari were dangerous. They did not surrender. A voice crackled through her comms. Captain Solon, this is Commander Reeves, 5th Marine Division. Our drop units are securing the northern quarter. We've set up a forward base near the old water plant. You're clear to move civilians there. Mara adjusted her helmet and nodded even though he couldn't see her. Copy that, Commander. We'll start moving in 10. She turned to her people, a mix of soldiers, farmers, engineers, and refugees. You heard them. Earth's troops are securing the area. It's time to bring everyone out of the tunnels. We're not hiding anymore. Cheers rose, weak at first, then stronger. Some of the colonists began to cry openly as they emerged from the underground shelters, their faces pale and hollow but filled with light. For weeks they had lived in darkness, waiting for the end. Now sunlight touched their faces again. Mara walked alongside Vale as they led a convoy of survivors through the cracked streets. Human Marines marched beside them, towering in dark armor that gleamed beneath the daylight. Their weapons glowed faintly, their visors blank and unreadable. The colonists stared at them in awe. "Hard to believe they came all this way for us," Vale said quietly. Mara nodded. "They came because we're part of them. Earth doesn't leave its own behind." As they crossed a bridge overlooking the river, the remains of a Velkhari walker smoldered below, its massive legs twisted in the rubble. The air still stank of ozone and burning metal. A group of children stopped to look, wide-eyed. One of them whispered, "Did the monsters finally die?" Mara knelt down beside the child. "No," she said softly. "They ran away, but we'll make sure they never come back." Overhead, the sound of engines roared. Dropships streaked through the clouds, ferrying reinforcements and supplies. The massive dreadnought Vengeance hung in low orbit, visible even in daylight, a colossal silhouette that covered the sun for moments at a time. Whenever its shadow passed over the ground, the humans below would look up, comforted. It was more than a ship now. It was a symbol, but symbols did not win wars. By the second day after the fleet's arrival, the Velkhari regrouped. They had lost their orbital command, but their ground forces were still strong. Deep in the eastern wastes, their warlord Kreth Volan had survived the destruction of his flagship. He stood now amid the wreckage of his own army, his body burned and scarred, his hatred burning hotter than ever. Burned and scarred, his hatred burning hotter than ever. He slammed his clawed fist against a holomap, scattering data shards. "They think this world is theirs," he growled. "They think a few metal giants can undo centuries of Velkhari conquest." A trembling subordinate bowed low. "My lord, our fleets are gone. The humans control the skies. What can we— Kreth's blade was out before the soldier finished. The alien's head hit the ground with a dull thud. Kreth didn't flinch. "What we always do," he hissed. "We remind them that victory means nothing if they cannot hold what they take." He turned to his lieutenants. "Prepare the swarm engines. I want every nest released. If the humans want this world, they will choke on it." Hours later, seismic tremors rippled through the eastern plains. Massive underground chambers, once dormant alien hives, cracked open, releasing legions of biomechanical beasts. They were smaller than soldiers, faster and bred for one purpose: destruction. They moved like shadows, swarming over the land in waves, guided by pheromone signals and hive mind commands. Back in the human camp, sensors began to scream. "Captain Solon," Reeves barked through the comms. "We've got movement east of the river. Thousands of contacts, ground-based, low profile. Not ships. Something else." Mara's heart sank. "The hives," she muttered. "The Velkhari kept them underground," Reeves cursed. "Marines are mobilizing, but there's too many. We'll need orbital support." She looked up at the faint glimmer of the Vengeance above. "I'll get you your target coordinates. Just keep your men alive." Within minutes, the colony's horizon erupted with movement. The swarm came like a living storm, thousands of chittering shapes racing across the plains. They moved on multiple legs, their bodies glowing with sickly green veins. Their screeches echoed across the valley like nails against metal. "Open fire!" Mara shouted. Human soldiers lined the barricades, rifles and cannons lighting up the field. The first wave hit like a tidal surge, bodies piling atop one another. The ground shook with their numbers. Marines in power armor waded into the fight, cutting through them with plasma blades and heavy flamers, but the swarm kept coming. Above them, a streak of blue fire descended from the heavens. The Vengeance had opened its lower batteries, targeting the densest clusters. The bombardment hit seconds later, enormous beams that carved through the alien ranks, turning them to ash. The shockwave knocked soldiers off their feet, but it didn't stop them from cheering. Vale crawled beside Mara behind the barricade, his face streaked with grime. "That's some backup!" he shouted over the noise. Mara reloaded her rifle, firing into the mass of creatures. "Yeah," she said between breaths. but they'll keep coming until we find their source." As if to answer her, a massive shadow appeared beyond the smoke. The swarm parted, and from their ranks rose something enormous, a beast that moved on 8 legs, taller than any building still standing. Its body was covered in armor plates, and its mouth glowed with burning plasma. A hive guardian. Mara stared up at it, her heart hammering. "That's our source," she whispered. Reeves's voice cut through her headset. "Captain, that thing's drawing energy from the nests. If we take it out, the swarm dies with it." "Then let's kill it," Mara said. "Marking target now." She pointed her laser designator at the creature's head. The light blinked red. "Vengeance, this is ground command. Target locked. Fire for effect." There was a pause. Then, through the clouds, the Dreadnought's shadow darkened. A single rail slug descended like the hand of a god. It struck the creature square in the chest, and the world exploded. When the light faded, the beast was gone. The swarm scattered, shrieking as their link broke. Silence followed. A long, trembling silence. Mara lowered her weapon, breathing hard. Around her, soldiers stared at the horizon where the creature had stood moments ago. The air shimmered with heat, and a crater burned where the hive once was. Vale let out a shaky laugh. "That's it. They're retreating." Mara nodded slowly. "Not retreating," she said. "Running." As the last of the swarm disappeared into the distance, the humans began to cheer. The sound spread like wildfire, echoing through the ruins, through the tunnels, and across the comms channels. It wasn't just victory, it was liberation. For the first time in weeks, Erebus Prime was free, but far away, deep in the void, another fleet was stirring. The Velkari Empire was vast, and Erebus Prime was only one world among thousands. Word of humanity's vengeance had spread, and the galaxy had begun to take notice. The fires of battle still smoldered on Erebus Prime days after the swarm's defeat. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, ash, and victory. Everywhere Mara Solon turned, she saw the scars of war, broken towers, streets cracked open by bombardment, and the bodies of both human and alien soldiers buried in the dust. Yet amid the destruction, something new had begun to grow. Life. Civilians had returned to the surface. Children played among the ruins, their laughter echoing faintly between shattered buildings. Soldiers helped rebuild barricades into shelters. The once dead city now pulsed with quiet energy. Humanity, as always, was rebuilding. It was what they did best. Mara walked through what was left of the command center, now repurposed into a temporary operations hub. Holographic maps flickered across the room, showing active marine patrols, supply routes, and remaining Velkari pockets. Around her, soldiers and engineers worked side by side. The sound of typing mixed with the hum of machinery. Vale met her at the center table carrying a data pad. "Report from the north. The Marines cleared the last hive nest near the canyon." "No signs of reformation," Mara nodded. "Good, and the civilians?" "They're safe in the new camps. Still shaken, but safe. You should see them, Captain. They talk about Earth's ships like they're legends. One kid said he saw the Vengeance fly so low it blocked out the sun." Mara allowed herself a small smile. That's not far from the truth. Then her gaze shifted upward, past the cracked ceiling toward the faint blue glimmer in the sky. "How's Admiral Kaito's fleet holding up?" "Still in orbit," Vale said. "The Dauntless's debris field has been marked as a memorial site. The Admiral's crews are handling cleanup and repairs. There's talk they'll leave a garrison fleet behind before they move on." Mara's expression darkened at the mention of the Dauntless. Thousands had died on that ship, sacrificing themselves to save the colony. Every survivor on Erebus Prime owed them their lives. "We'll name the central square after them," she said quietly. "The Dauntless Plaza. Every child born here will know that name." Vale nodded. "I'll make sure it's done." Before she could respond, a Marine officer entered the room. "Captain Solon, Admiral Kaito requests your presence." "Priority channel," Mara straightened. "Patch it through!" The holographic projector hummed to life, forming the image of Admiral Kaito. His uniform was still immaculate, despite the fatigue visible in his eyes. Behind him, the bridge of the Vengeance buzzed with activity, reports, sensor readings, weapon calibrations. War never rested. Captain Solon, Kaido said, his voice calm but heavy. Congratulations. You and your people fought with honor. Erebus Prime stands because of your courage. Thank you, Admiral, she said. We only held out because of Earth's promise. You kept it. Kaido inclined his head slightly, but his tone shifted. There's no time to celebrate yet. My long-range scouts picked up something beyond the system. A Velkari transmission burst, coded and deliberate. They're calling for reinforcements. Mara frowned. You think they'll come back? Oh, they will, Kaido said. The Velkari never accept defeat quietly. They've lost their pride and their fleet, and the Empire will not ignore that. They'll want revenge, and to make an example of us. She felt the weight of his words settle like lead in her chest. How long until they arrive? Our estimates say a week, maybe less. A strike fleet, most likely, smaller than what we faced here but armed with new weapons. We can't risk them regaining control. Mara nodded slowly. Then we fight again. No, Kaido said firmly. We don't fight alone this time. Earth is sending reinforcements, a full battle group. But there's something else, something more important. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. We intercepted part of their transmission before it reached deep space. It contained references to a project, something called the Culling Star. We don't know what it is yet, but the Velkari seem desperate to protect it. Mara frowned. Weapon, likely. If it's anything like their storm cannon, it could wipe out entire fleets. We need to know what it does and how to stop it. So you want us to find it. Kaido's image flickered slightly as the signal adjusted. We've traced part of the data to a facility beneath Erebus Prime, one of their forward research outposts, hidden before the invasion. My sensors show deep energy readings. It's possible the Velkari left behind data, or even a prototype. Mara's heart quickened. Then we'll go down there. Kaido nodded. Take a marine detachment. Send everything you find back to orbit. If we can understand what the Velkari are planning, we might save more than just this colony. The hologram faded. The room went quiet except for the low hum of machinery. Vale looked at Mara. You're not thinking of going yourself, are you? I am, she said. If this culling star is as dangerous as it sounds, I'm not trusting anyone else with it. He sighed. You really can't resist running into danger, can you? She smirked. Would you follow me if I could? Vale chuckled. Every damn time. Vale chuckled. Every damn time. Within an hour, Mara and her team were moving. They traveled by transport crawler through the ruins, heading toward the mountains east of the colony. The terrain grew rough, the air colder. The landscape there had been ravaged by orbital fire, fields of glass, rivers of melted rock. Yet beneath it all, buried deep in the rock, scanners showed the faint pulse of power. When they reached the site, they found a yawning chasm where an alien base had been half buried by rubble. The entrance was marked by twisted metal spires that still pulsed with faint green light. It looked alive, breathing in slow rhythm. Creepy, Vale muttered. Mara lifted her rifle. Stay sharp. The Velkari like traps. They descended into the darkness, lights cutting through the dust. The interior walls glowed faintly, covered in organic circuitry. As they moved deeper, they passed rows of alien pods, some shattered, some still humming. Inside the transparent casings, pale shapes floated in thick fluid. Clones, Vale asked. Maybe experiments, Mara said. Whatever this place was, they left in a hurry. The tunnel ended in a vast chamber. At its center stood a crystalline structure suspended by energy beams. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Vale, Mara said quietly. Get your scanner on that. He approached cautiously, holding up his device. It's not just power. It's transmitting something. Long-range signal. Wait. It's linked to coordinates outside the system. Mara's pulse quickened. You think that's where the culling star is? Before he could answer, the structure flared. A beam of light shot from its core, hitting the ceiling and filling the chamber with static. The floor shook. Ma'am! A Marine shouted. Something's activating. Mara raised her weapon as the structure's outer shell began to crack open. Inside, a shape unfurled, sleek, silver, and mechanical. It was a drone, unlike any they'd seen before. Its limbs extended like blades, and its eyes burned red. Contact! She yelled. Take it down! The room exploded into chaos. Energy bolts lit the dark as Marines fired. The drone moved with impossible speed, deflecting shots and slicing through armor. Mara ducked behind cover, firing short bursts. One bolt hit the drone's side, blowing a piece of its casing apart. It screamed, a sound both mechanical and alive. Vale shouted, "It's protecting the core!" "Then we break the core!" Mara sprinted forward, firing as she ran. The drone lunged toward her, but she slid beneath its swing and aimed up, firing 3 rounds into its exposed chest. The last one hit the power node, and the creature convulsed before collapsing in sparks. The crystal structure flickered, its light dying slowly. Mara stood breathing hard, her armor scorched. "Get the data," she ordered. Vale retrieved a shard of alien tech from the base. "If I'm reading this right," he said, "the culling star isn't just a weapon. It's a planet, a machine world, built to erase entire civilizations." Mara stared at him in silence. He swallowed. "Admiral Kaito needs to see this." Outside, far above Erebus Prime, the Vengeance drifted through orbit. Kaito stood before the viewport watching the stars. His communications officer approached him quietly. "Sir, message from the surface." "It's Captain Solon." He turned. "Put it through." When her face appeared on the holo display, she didn't waste time. "Admiral, the Velkari aren't planning to retake this planet. They're preparing to cleanse the entire sector. We have their coordinates." Kaito's jaw tightened. "Then it's not over." "No," she said. "It's just beginning." And beyond the edge of known space, far past the faint light of Erebus Prime, something vast began to awaken. A cold world forged of metal, its surface glowing with power older than humanity itself. The culling star had heard the call. A week passed, and Erebus Prime no longer looked like a battlefield. Scars still ran deep through the planet's surface, craters, ash fields, the charred skeletons of cities. But the silence felt different now. It was not the quiet of fear, but of rebuilding. Smoke no longer choked the sky. People no longer whispered in the shadows, wondering if help would come. They knew now. Earth answered. Captain Mara Solon stood in the heart of what used to be the main administration tower, now stripped bare and surrounded by scaffolding. Solar panels lined the rooftops. Antennae and sensors reached skyward like reborn limbs. From this high perch, she could see the network of temporary shelters stretching across the northern plain. Civilians were returning. Machines hummed. Roads were being cleared. Marines patrolled alongside local security teams, and children played under the shadows of armored walkers, no longer afraid. But Mara's thoughts weren't on the present. They were fixed firmly on the stars, on what lay beyond. Admiral Kaito had not left orbit. His ships remained overhead, scanning, preparing. The data recovered from the alien research facility had revealed something no one had expected. Not a superweapon, not a new fleet, but a living world, a weaponized planet built to cleanse entire star systems. The Velkari called it the culling star. It had been a myth, a ghost told in whispers among fringe colonies and forgotten outposts. But the myth was real. Coordinates were now in Earth's hands. The artifact beneath Erebus had been more than a transmitter. It had been a beacon. The signal it sent had reached the culling star before they had even discovered it. Now, that world-sized weapon was waking, and it was heading for them. Mara stepped into the new command center, a hastily rebuilt structure crafted from a grounded Velkari troopship. Inside, the lighting was dim, systems scavenged from half a dozen technologies. Her boots echoed as she crossed the floor toward a glowing holomap of the system. Vale looked up from the console. "Just got word. The fleet's ready to move. ETA on the culling star? 4 days if our calculations are right. It's already bypassed 2 relay beacons. Burned both to ash. The Admiral says if we don't intercept it before it hits the Erebus line, we won't get a second chance." Mara folded her arms. "We're not equipped to fight a planet." "No," Vale said. "But Earth's bringing in something that is." He tapped a control and the hologram zoomed out to show a new symbol approaching from deep space. A diamond-shaped marker, huge in size. Mara's eyebrows lifted. "That's not a dreadnought," Vale grinned. "Nope, that's the Archangel, Earth's first mobile fortress. She left the Sol system the moment Kaito's report went through." She stared at the projection. "That thing's real?" "Built in orbit around Saturn. She's not fast, but she's got more firepower than the rest of the fleet combined. And a full brigade of the Iron Corps on board. Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. They're sending the Iron Corps? Vale nodded. If Earth's sending its angels, it means this isn't just about Erebus anymore. This is about making sure it never happens again. Outside the command center, ships roared to life. Civilians looked up and shielded their eyes as drop cruisers ascended into the air. Thousands of volunteers, not just Marines, but colonists and ex-miners, engineers and medics, were preparing to leave with the fleet. They weren't soldiers, but they didn't want to stay behind either. They had seen what the Velkhari could do. They wanted to finish it. That night, Mara boarded her transport. The interior was filled with familiar faces, many of them scarred and tired. Some were old resistance fighters. Others were new recruits, kids who'd seen too much and wanted to do something about it. As the engines lifted the ship into the stars, Mara looked down at Erebus Prime one last time. The planet was no longer a graveyard. It was the spark of something greater, proof that humanity could endure the worst and still rise stronger. And now that spark would travel with them into the void. The fleet gathered at the edge of the system. 23 ships, including dreadnoughts, destroyers, and assault carriers. And at their center, the Archangel, just as massive and terrifying as the rumors had claimed. It was a flying fortress, its hull layered in thick plates of silver alloy and shield nodes that pulsed like a heartbeat. Its main cannon stretched along its spine, a rail array large enough to crack a moon. Her engines glowed with silent power, and her name was etched across her side in sharp black letters. When Mara arrived aboard the Vengeance, Admiral Kaito greeted her in person. He looked more tired now, more worn than before, but in his eyes burned the same focused fire. "Welcome aboard, Captain," he said. "You're just in time." "Time for what?" Kaito gestured toward the main display. A massive silhouette had just appeared in the far quadrant of the map. It moved slowly, like a leviathan crossing the sea, but its trajectory was locked. Mara stared. "Is that it?" "The culling star," Kaito confirmed. "Size of a small planet. No known life signs. Entirely mechanical. We estimate its surface is covered in weapon platforms and fusion cannons. And that," he pointed at a smaller red flare near the core, "is what we believe to be its heart. The data you recovered suggests if we destroy that, we shut down the whole system. How do we get close enough?" "We don't," Kaito said. "The Iron Corps does." At that moment, the doors hissed open, and 5 figures stepped into the room. They were taller than any soldier Mara had seen, towering in black armor that shimmered with refractive plating. Each carried a weapon that looked like it could tear through tanks. Their helmets were shaped like angled visors, emotionless and cold. One stepped forward and removed her helmet. She had pale skin, short dark hair, and eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Captain Solon," she said. "I'm Commander Ilian of the Iron Corps. We'll be taking point." Mara shook her hand. "Glad to have you." Mara shook her hand. "Glad to have you." Ilian nodded once. "We strike in 48 hours. We'll need an escort squad to guide us to the Culling Star's core. I've read your file. You're the only one who's survived a Velkhari hive breach and lived to write the report." "I had help," Mara said. "Then bring them." That night, the fleet made final preparations. Drones were deployed to map the Culling Star's outer shell. Recon teams analyzed every crater, every crevice. A plan took shape. Breach the outer defenses using the Archangel's spinal cannon, deploy a joint task force into the breach, and reach the core before the Culling Star could fire on Erebus. And through it all, the planet weapon moved closer. It did not speak. It did not signal. It only advanced, a cold force of extermination built to erase. At the end of the briefing, Kaito looked across his commanders. "We don't just fight for Erebus," he said. "We fight for every world they've ever marked for death. We fight so that no child grows up under that shadow again." Silence followed. Then, one by one, hands were raised in salute. Mara stood alone at the viewing window later that night, watching the stars drift by. Her rifle sat beside her, newly restored. Her armor had been repainted with Earth's sigil and the mark of Erebus Prime beneath it. A rising flame. Vale approached quietly. "Still awake?" She nodded. "I don't think I've slept since the first invasion." He looked at the culling star's growing outline on the far edge of the display. "Think we can stop it?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "We're not here to stop it. We're here to show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far." Behind them, the stars began to dim as the enemy came into view. A world built for death, turning its face toward Earth's fury, and Earth, as ever, was ready to answer. They dropped into the heart of the machine world like needles of fire. The breach opened by the Archangel's spinal cannon had torn a wound across the culling star's surface, a chasm nearly 10 kilometers wide, glowing with molten alloy and fractured armor. The impact crater still burned with residual plasma, its edges crawling with defensive drones and magnetic storms. But the strike had done its job. For the first time in recorded history, something had hurt the culling star, and humanity wasn't finished. The descent pods punched through the toxic atmosphere, shaking as heat and static clawed at their hulls. Inside, Captain Mara Solon stood with a rifle clutched to her chest, bracing against the violent turbulence. Around her, members of her hand-picked squad waited in silence, Vale, grim-faced and calm. Sergeant Ayla Reed, an Erebus scout with uncanny reflexes. Corporal Juno, a demolitions expert, and 2 Iron Core giants who hadn't spoken a word since launch. Their pod hit the surface with bone-crushing force, throwing up a wave of black dust and burning gas. Alarms chirped. The back hatch blew off with a hiss of steam. "Move!" Mara barked, vaulting out first. The surface of the culling star was like nothing she'd ever seen. Not metal, not rock, but something fused between the two. Vast hexagonal plates covered the ground in endless patterns, each one humming with quiet energy. Massive spires rose into the sky like frozen lightning bolts. Lightning danced along the clouds above, red and unnatural. Enemy fire greeted them instantly. Defense turrets unfolded from the walls, their barrels glowing bright blue. Swarms of drones poured from ports in the ground, moving like insects, fast and coordinated. "Cover!" Ayla shouted, diving behind a fallen shard of armor. The Iron Corps reacted like machines. One stepped forward and deployed a portable shield generator, projecting a dome of energy around them. The second, Ilian herself, lifted a launcher from her back and fired a cluster of homing spikes into the enemy swarm. Each spike exploded in a radius burst, shredding the first wave of drones before they closed the distance. "Path clear," Ilian said, her voice devoid of fear. "Advance," Mara gave the signal. The squad moved in a tight formation, weapons up, ducking between twisted structures and broken circuitry. Every inch of this place felt alive. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Walls shifted and unfolded like breathing lungs. It wasn't a factory. It was a body. Vale panted beside her. "So this thing's not just a weapon. It's thinking, reacting." "Exactly," Mara said. "And it knows we're here." Their objective was buried deep. A central fusion matrix beneath the surface, the heart of the culling star. The data they'd recovered back on Erebus suggested it was the one weak point in an otherwise invincible world. If they reached it and planted the charges, the entire construct would destabilize. But that meant getting through kilometers of automated defenses. The squad ducked into a trench-like structure lined with pulsing cables. Energy surged beneath their boots. "I've never seen tech like this," Vale muttered. "It's not even Valkyrie." "It's older." "Way older." Juno glanced back at him. "You're saying they didn't build it?" "I'm saying they might have found it and turned it into a weapon." Before anyone could answer, the trench ahead split open like a blooming flower. A massive construct rose from the depths, towering and segmented, its head shaped like a blade, its arms bristling with cannons and claws. Its body was wrapped in coiling wires, each connected to the walls around them. "Centurion-class Guardian," Ilian said. "Brace." The Iron Core charged without hesitation. Ilian leapt high, landing on the construct's arm and jamming a thermal charge into its joint. The second Iron Soldier covered her with suppressing fire, the rounds shaking the walls with every impact. Mara and her team flanked wide, picking off support drones that tried to swarm their rear. The Guardian roared, a deafening, mechanical screech, and slammed a claw into the wall, sending shockwaves that knocked Vale off his feet. Mara grabbed him, hauling him behind cover as Juno lobbed a concussion grenade into the creature's exposed core. The detonation sent sparks flying, and the Guardian staggered, limbs locking. "Ilyan!" Mara shouted. "I see it!" The Iron Corps commander vaulted over the collapsing creature and drove her blade, a meter-long plasma edge, into the Guardian's skull. A burst of light erupted, followed by silence. The Guardian crumpled. "Clear," Ilyan announced. "Minimal damage to team. Proceeding." They moved quickly, deeper into the core. The corridors changed. Walls now pulsed with deep crimson light, and the air grew heavy with static. A low vibration filled the space, like a machine humming in its sleep. Reed stopped suddenly, scanning a panel. "Captain, the gravity's shifting." Mara looked down. Her boots weren't touching the floor. "Go zero," she ordered. They activated their magnetic grips and floated forward. The passage narrowed into a tunnel lined with crystal-like fibers. The heat increased. Their suits registered radiation spikes. They were close. The heart of the culling star revealed itself at the end of the corridor, a vast spherical chamber with a pulsating core suspended in midair by beams of magnetic force. It looked like a sun trapped in a cage, swirling energy 100 meters wide. Below it, walkways spiraled like the strands of a web, leading to control stations and capacitor arrays. It was beautiful and terrifying. Juno whistled. "How the hell do we destroy that?" "Target the stabilizers," Vale said, already pulling out a data spike. "We shut them down. The core collapses in on itself." Reed nodded. "Planting charges now," Mara gave the signal. Her team fanned out, attaching fusion charges to each of the support nodes. As they worked, she kept her eyes on the upper platforms. Something was coming. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. Then she saw it. It stepped from the shadows like a nightmare, a tall, skeletal figure draped in armor that shifted and pulsed like liquid metal. Its face was a mask of black glass, expressionless, yet somehow ancient. "Captain," Vale said slowly, "that's not a drone." "No," Mara whispered. "That's the architect." Every data fragment they'd uncovered hinted at it. The original controller of the culling star. Velkari legends described it as the machine's mind, older than their species, possibly older than any. The architect raised a hand. The gravity around the team fluctuated violently. Reed screamed as she was flung into the ceiling. Juno slid across the floor, clutching the detonator. Drones poured in from the tunnels, sleek, curved, silent. Mara fired, even knowing it wouldn't be enough. Her rounds sparked off the architect's shielding. Ilyan charged forward, her armor burning with overclocked energy, but the architect swatted her aside with a wave of its hand. Sparks exploded from her suit. "She didn't move." "No," Mara growled. "Not here. Not again." She grabbed the detonator from Juno's outstretched hand. The charges were live. All she had to do was press the button. The architect hovered toward her, silent, inevitable. "You don't belong here," she said. "You think because you were born in darkness we'll bow to it. But we're not afraid of the dark anymore." It raised a hand. She pressed the trigger. The explosion wasn't light. It was silence. A wave of force tore through the chamber, disintegrating the core. Time seemed to fold inward. Energy screamed through the structure. The last thing Mara saw was the architect shattering into 1,000 glowing shards as the entire heart of the culling star collapsed. She didn't feel the impact. She only saw light. Then, stars. Mara gasped awake inside a medical bay. The ceiling was white, soft. She turned her head. Vale sat beside her, bandaged and alive. "You did it," he said, smiling weakly. "We all made it. Well, most of us." She sat up slowly, body aching. "Where are we?" "On the Vengeance. The fleet pulled us out the second the core imploded. The culling star went dark. The core imploded. The culling star went dark.